Hello and welcome to HPA-Global Insights, where we'll be interviewing experts from the dietary supplement, nutritional ingredient, and overall natural health food industry. Please like, subscribe, turn on that little notification bell, and comment below. Now on with the show. Hi, welcome to another episode of HPA-Global Insights. Today I'm happy to introduce our good friend Cynthia Batterman. She has been in the industry of supplements and overall wellness for 25 plus years and has worked for many companies, including Mars, ConAgra, DSM, iHealth, Nelson's, the makers of Rescue Remedy. And currently she is the owner and chief trailblazer of Essex Solutions. Cynthia, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hey, Jeff. I'm great. Good to see you. I appreciate you inviting me here today. It's nice to have an excuse to put some real clothes on with my yoga pants.
But you got slippers on, I'm sure, right?
Oh, of course.
big Mickey Mouse slippers or something. I do. I have huge ones on. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about your expertise in the area of marketing. Global marketing. We'll talk, mostly a little bit about China and stuff like that. But give us a little introduction for the people that don't know you and haven't met you over the years. Give us a little introduction about you and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So my history sort of early in my career, I started out with the big Fortune 100 companies, as you said, M&M Mars and ConAgra Foods. I worked in a lot of different types of marketing roles, from innovation to new products, traditional brand marketing, and kind of grew up, if you will, learning how to do things the right way with really deep pockets. From there, I moved to smaller, more entrepreneurial businesses, like Nelson's, where I ran their North and South American division for them. We did a lot of new products. We did expansion into new countries, an awful lot in South America. And then moved to iHealth, where what I was doing for them was expanding the Culturelle brand as well as some of their other brands globally for them. And they didn't have an international presence. So we took it from really ground zero, developed the strategy, developed the team, and then executed a national launch for them, global launch for them, really, expanding into over 13 countries in a matter of about 5 or 6 years. And now what I'm doing is kind of doing this on my own. And what I really love doing, what I have a passion for, is helping small to mid-sized companies develop a brand strategy and a marketing strategy that will profitably grow their business while still providing something to the consumer that makes their life better. And that's kind of really where my passion is. And how do I do that? And I've learned over the years how to kind of cut corners, right? From working with the big companies, I've seen what they've done, what's necessary, what's not necessary, and I can translate that into a strategy for a company where we can cost effectively build that business.
Yeah, I mean, that's invaluable lessons learned. When you have deep pockets, you can stumble through it and make lots of errors along the way because you don't have worries about we have a very limited budget. We've got bigger budget, and especially rolling into countries that are much different than the U.S. market. For example, China, or there's a lot of learning curve there, and having deep pockets is definitely one way to get through that. So that's awesome.
On the downside, though, sometimes what happens is they take so much time is that they miss the opportunity because they're so busy researching. And that's really a country like China, right, that moves so quickly.
Yeah, you get bogged down with multiple PPTs and reports and MBA colleagues that are, doing all their, the meanwhile, here comes one of the companies you mentioned, a small, medium-sized company that sees the target and just goes for it and grabs it.
Right.
I've had that. I've had that experience as well, working with a couple of very large players in our industry that it takes a very long time to get the agreement and get everyone on the same page, and then, move the tugboat forward. It just takes time for sure.
Yeah.
Well, with that note, let's kind of talk about U.S. versus China, because I'm sure in your role now, it's fun because you do get to work with a lot of, you're not working just for one brand, you're working for different companies that are coming to you and hiring you, and small and medium-sized companies that have kind of, mapped out their US strategy. If it's a US company, that's their primary goal. Usually is, let's control as best to our ability America before we expand our footprint overseas. And in our industry, China has been a very, kind of bright target for a lot of companies when they go to expand. It's like, oh, let's go to China. Everyone's in China and there's cross-border e-commerce and there's this and that, and let's get to China. But it is, as I mentioned, a very difficult market at the regulatory level. And as part of those regulatory as part of that regulatory situation, there's a lot of restraints on marketing and advertising, and it depends on how you enter the market. If you get the product registered, if you don't, and you go cross-border or brick and mortar, I mean, there's so many different areas to consider. So let's talk about U.S. versus China in terms of strategies, and what things have you found different, especially with like Culturelle. You did a lot of work expanding their business in China. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Boy, at the beginning of the day, probably one of the biggest issues that I found was that companies, and not just iHealth, but most companies that go into China, believe that what they've done in their home territory is always the best, right? And they go in and they forget to adjust for the nuances of the various countries. And China, there are so many variances. When you look across the marketing mix, whether it's your target, whether it's your positioning, where you're going to be selling it, the product itself, so much really could be adjusted, and in many cases needs to be adjusted in order to maximize the opportunity. And just starting with the raw numbers of demographics. With iHealth, we do have a product that is targeted towards kids. So in the US, there are 4 million babies born every year. In China, 16 to 17 million. Huge opportunity. You then go to the psychographics of how the moms in China think about things, right? It's that little prince syndrome. There's one baby, they want it to be the absolute best that it can be. And what we've learned is that the opportunity for that kids product was much greater in China, because not only of the size, but also because of how the mothers thought about their babies and how they wanted the absolute best for them. It was a huge, huge opportunity for us. And we were able to tweak a few things and really make it successful over there by addressing the various areas of the marketing mix, particularly messaging, right? They want something that's safe, that's effective. We were #1 in the US at the time. The parents love that. And we became the largest selling division for that product worldwide after just a couple of years. So we really were able to optimize that very quickly in China by addressing some of those differences in the China market.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. I was working with a company that, one of the things, the misconceptions, kind of what you hit on earlier there, is a company, let's say they have 10 products or 30 products, and then they say, okay, let's take our, top 3 best sellers and bring them to China. That might be a mistake. It might be your bottom 3 sellers in the American market that are going to be your top sellers in China, just because of the demographics or the need. And, one company I was working with, they had a product for, it was a kind of nutrition product to help with breastfeeding, and they had many other products, but that particular one in America was it was getting canceled. I mean, no one cared about it. There was no ladies were interested in it really, and the marketing message just fell flat. But in China, that was like gold. I mean, that hit a target nerve, if you will, for those moms that want the best for their kids. Not that American moms don't want the best for their kids, but it's just kind of like hyper. yeah, it's just hyper aware, and moms doing their best to try and find international brands that fit, something that can give their kids an advantage in growth, cognitive, everything.
Yes,
That's very,
absolutely.
very interesting point there and lesson learned. So
Yeah,
if you're out there,
that's a great lesson learned. Yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, just look at your mix of products and, just keep in mind that might be one of your worst sellers in your home market, might be a top seller in China.
Right, right. And it's also really important too to find those resources in a new country that can help you to learn all of that quickly. And that's one of the challenges, right? A big company, as we said, might go in and research for years. Well, you've missed the opportunity. So if you can quickly learn some of that by partnering with people like, where I met you, right? The US HPA, a great advertising agency, maybe a local partner, a little bit of research, maybe secondary research that already exists, you can get there much quicker. And I think, especially in China, that's really key. You get in there and take advantage of that opportunity quickly before someone else does.
Yeah, exactly. Because China does work. I mean, I think that's another thing that people, once they get into the China market and see how hard the social media teams work in China and how fast they turn over stuff compared to, the US market, it's just nonstop. And that's become a problem in China for people, overworking themselves. And that's become a category of supplements now of targeting these young 20-year-old people that are working for tech companies in particular, that are staying up like till 2 or 3 in the morning, just working, and having problems with sleep and having problems with cognitive functions because they're not resting. And there's been media reports of people literally killing themselves at work. I mean, young people dying. And it's been connected to that they just are not resting. Their heart rhythm gets out of whack because they're not resting and all this stuff. So yeah, China just moves fast, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and that on an aside, that's a challenge too for US companies, where we want everything to go through our legal department that's ever said about our products everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it's very difficult when you've got to translate it. Secondly, you've got to translate it correctly, and it might take us a week to turn it over. And they've already moved on in China to new messaging. So whole cycle is a challenge for US companies as well, European companies too, for that matter.
Yeah, it's, I think, for smaller companies especially, the typical model is they'll find a China partner, and the China partner will kind of run the show for them over in China, which is, a good way to go, but gotta make sure you find the right partner, and more so be involved and make sure you know what's happening with your brand, because there's been a lot of cases where companies have gotten themselves in trouble because the in-country partner is crossing the line in advertising law and making these claims and boasting about the product. And then before you know it, the product gets blacklisted, or, they get in trouble. And there's been quite a few international companies that have been fined and have gotten in trouble as a result of their on-the-ground distributor, just boasting up something to sell, to get it to sell.
Yeah,
so that's a very, very fine line to walk in China with all those, regulations, especially if you're doing cross-border e-commerce. You're not allowed to effectively legally advertise the product with any kind of claim at all in China. So that's the other kind of issue. So with that kind of touching on cross-border, let's, and this is very important in China, let's look at the differences between traditional retail like brick and mortar and versus e-commerce, type of, when you go at a project.
Absolutely. So boy, a lot of differences there country by country as well. And of course, we always think of the base as being the US, right? Where you have these huge mega chains that own a huge majority of the business. If you just look at the drug chains, for example, in the US, take CVS and Walgreens, you've got 90% of the ACV of the business, right, of those 25,000 chains by just getting to those two customers. If you're selling in drug chains, and that's huge. Then you go to some place like, let's just take Brazil is maybe someplace in between where they do have some chains, but still a lot of independents. And we just don't know how to deal with independents here anymore. Very little e-commerce, in Brazil. So it's almost like stepping back in time in the US 20 years, where you've got a few chains, lots of independents, no e-commerce. So, that's kind of going in that direction. And then you go the other direction to China, where everything now is moving towards e-commerce. And that's such a strong channel. Now about 25% of supplements are being sold just on the Tmall, Alibaba platforms. That's huge in a very short frame. But then you've also got tons of independents as well. So and the numbers are kind of hard to pin down, as you know, from working in China, somewhere between 120 and 200,000 drugstores there, and most all of them independents. So you think about that from a operational standpoint. In the US, you need very few salespeople, right? Because you're going to one point. They do everything for you in the stores, or cost, of course, right? But then in China, you have all of these independent stores. You need an army of sales guys in order to get into all of those little independents and make sure your product stays on the shelf after the first sale goes through.
Exactly.
Right. So when you tell that to people in the United States, right, that you need this huge sales force, like, what do you mean? We only have 10 here. So very different. So again, just you really need to understand when you go into a new market where the sales are going to come from and how different it is and how you can best address that. Is it with your own sales force, or do you hire, an army of distributors, kind of merchandisers to do that for you? And that's an option too. So those are some of the things we look at when we go in and decide, how do we best want to launch in a new country? And each market is so different.
Yeah, I mean, China's at every level. You got to think of China as is regional. So there's,
yes,
every region in China has its own, like its own little kingdoms, if you will, and that goes all the way down to the government level. I mean, it's really
right.
And with the drugstores, it's very much like that too. So it's like Beijing, for example, there's like Golden Elephant Pharmacy is a pharmacy chain that's only is Beijing. What was that? What was that? The Great
Beijing.
Wall.
Yeah, the Great Wall.
The Great Wall. Oh my goodness. Oh, that was a Starbucks cup.
It was a Starbucks, yeah.
Oh my goodness, they had it was so
part of
funny.
my collection.
At the Forbidden City, they used to have a Starbucks right at the entryway inside the Forbidden City, and people just, including myself, was just like, no, that's not right. Get that out of there. And they eventually did close it. But anyways, I digress. So Beijing has the Golden Elephant Pharmacy is one chain that, I don't know exactly how many. I think they had like 300 to 500 locations, but they're all in Beijing proper, if you will. And they're, maybe 6 of them are kind of flagship stores with a footprint not as big as a CVS, maybe half the size of that. And that was considered, there's only 6 or 10 of those that are that size. The rest are going to be all localized into neighborhoods that are very small. I mean, the size of, I can't even think of a store that we would have in America that would be that big. I mean, the tiny, like
a convenience store.
Not even. I mean, it's just not like wow. Just you walk in the door and there's glass cabinets that go around in a U shape, and you're inside, and then there's people with white coats on the other. Maybe 3 people work there, and then everything is behind a glass cabinet. You walk in, you walk out. It's very small. So those, if you're going to sell in pharmacy brick and mortar, like you said, you're going to have a relationship with Golden Elephant. Then you're going to have to go down and have a relationship with, Shanghai #1 Pharmacy and their chain, and then another chain, another. They're all regional, and it is. You need solid relationships, and also more importantly, keep up on those relationships. Like you said, you get something signed with them, and you're like, good, great, we're going to go, and it's going to be on this end cap right there when people walk in. And then if you go in the store, maybe a week later or 2 weeks later, where's the, it's gone, or it's moved over to a different location. So having that sales force to go in and make sure everything's moving in the direction that you've planned out is really important.
Yeah, and then you've got the incentives that you have to pay, if you want your product pushed or represented, right, with pharmacists, and then the opportunity to buy these push girls, which that's something that I don't know if we've ever had that here in the United States, but just the models even are so different when you go in and say, gee, I need a probiotic, or maybe not even that. Maybe you go in and say, what do you have for immunity?
Mm-hmm. Here's a question. What about senior citizens, for example? So China, it's well known and documented now that they have an upside down population demographic with this huge senior population growing, and over the next decade or so, it's just going to continue to grow because of the one-child policy. It's kind of made their demographics warp out of control here. But so if you're a company that's got a product that's for senior citizens, China's a great opportunity, number one. But number two, what if you're going to market a senior citizen product in America compared to a senior citizen product in China, what would be your initial thoughts in the differences of going about doing that?
Yeah, a couple things. And you're right, like they have, compared to the US, 4 times as many people over the age of 65 as we do. And you think about that, we're like 50 million, they're nearly 200 million in that age group. So just at very top level, it seems like a huge opportunity. And it's not really an area that people pay a lot of attention to, even in the US. There just aren't that many products geared toward them, and things for joint supplements, those types of things. But I think the real opportunities probably are for products that are more for preventative versus dealing with a current indication or issue. So things like immune supplements, things that help keep eyes healthy over time. So I think that there are some indications and niches that that companies could go after. But from a marketing perspective, it's going to be a little bit different than what we would do in the US, because over there, still a lot of kids, like my age, right? I'm a kid, would be buying, right? Because they're not quite as savvy. They're getting better, but not on the computer. So if they're not going to the stores because of COVID, and they're not buying on the internet, how do you get it to them? So really the marketing efforts probably are more likely to be done towards the middle generation who would be buying for their parents. So a lot of types of things to think about there when you would go after a target like that. Yeah.
So like you'd mentioned, I think the mom and dad, let's say anywhere from 20 to 40 years old, something like that, they have kids, and then they have their parents, which would be the grandparents. I think in America, the mom and dad buy for themselves and buy for their kids, and the grandparents or the parents just buy for themselves,
Right,
so I think the mess. Yeah. So when you have if you see Centrum Silver advertised on TV or something like that, it's just, it's an advertisement with some silver haired people and, them having fun and doing some sports or something. And it's really, hitting them directly. Like, hey, you could be out there playing basketball and, doing stuff if you take our supplements or whatever. Whereas China, as you mentioned, I think the advertising, print or, video, digital, would have to tug on the strings of the mom and dad to buy the product for their parents, because the parents aren't going to, like you said, the parents in a lot of cases aren't digital savvy, and they're not going to buy it. They don't know enough about the industry yet to buy things like this. So I think that's a good point you made, is that although your target is the senior citizen, the message has to be absorbed by, the mom and dad that are 20 to 40 years old, and tug on their heartpearls to get them to make the purchase for mom and dad and give it to them. So that's a pretty good point.
Yeah. So that's who you influence, right? Not the people who actually end up taking the product, which is different.
Yeah, exactly. And then in China, I think another difference, we go with the kids. here we've got I mean, in China, they do have them now, but, we had the, Spider-Man vitamins also. So the kids themselves see, oh, the Spider-Man, it's not so much the vitamin, but the kids might like, oh, mommy, I want to take the Spider-Man. They're kind of tugging on both strings of mom and dad and the kids in China. I do know they have some, but it's not as well played out as done here. So let's wrap this up. And before we go, what do you have on your schedule in the coming months in terms of like travel? You're going to go anywhere so people maybe get to meet you or see you, or do you have anything that you're doing that you want to let us know about?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting out of my house. That's for sure, right? Like most of us. So I have signed up for the Nicholas Hall conference that's coming up in Athens at the beginning of May, and that's a really great conference. A lot of people there, and they talk about a lot of trends that are happening in the OTC world and pharmaceutical, but mainly OTC world. And so that's one that I really like to attend. It's great for networking and also learning what's happening in terms of the latest trends, not just China.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of Nicholas Hall events as a speaker and an attendee. They're nice. They're good events. Hopefully by May that this Omicron will have tuckered out and will everything will be open back up and you can get out there and I hope you're staying on for more than just the conference to enjoy Athens.
Well, I might be, I mean, if you go that far, right? It's my own business, so I'm spending my money. Might as well get a little fun out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I look forward to getting out and seeing some friends again.
Cool. So we'll have a contact card for you at the end of this. So if anyone wants to, message you or get in touch with you, they'll be able to do so. Cynthia, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's fun to see you and talk with you again.
Yeah, this is usually one of the first things people ask, but how's the weather? It looks kind of bright there in the background, the windows. Is it a sunny day there?
It is. You can't probably see you can't see it, but the reflection is really off of the snow.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah, the bright snow. Oh, nice.
Yeah, but it's fine. Yeah.
All right, Cynthia. Well, take care. I hope to see you soon. Get one of the shows coming up. Yep. All right. Absolutely. Well, thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you. Great to see you, Jeff. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to HPA Global Insights. Please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues. Any questions or suggestions, email us at info@uschinahpa.org. This channel is operated by US China Health Products Association, which is a nonprofit organization. Please consider joining the association and supporting its global endeavors. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, take care.